This is the 7-layer beefy Russell Mock. This was born from me basically saying, and a lot of other people online saying, oh yeah, Russell moccasins and moccasins are nice and all, but they're really lightweight. They're not the most durable things. You're never gonna be able to really work in them. And then Luke from Russell was like, you're wrong. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, they're moccasins, they can't be that durable. He's like, we have over 125 years of history outfitting some of the most brave adventurers, some of the most important people in history like presidents, some of the toughest terrain like the Appalachian Trail, some of the most rugged things that people have achieved in history have been achieved inside a pair of Russell moccasins. So after hearing that, I was like, all right, fair point. But then I issued the challenge of prove it. Make the most ridiculously over top boot, make the most redundant, make the most durable, the most adventure ready, using every single component and feature, maxing out everything to make the ultimate, most durable, most rugged, most over the top moccasin that anyone's ever made. So we're gonna cut this thing in half, run it through a test and dissect it as we go along to figure out, can Russell moccasins make a boot that rivals the highest quality, most durable boots in the world, like the Pacific Northwest boots? Is there inherent flaws to making a moccasin boot as durable as possible? Or is there benefits that you can only get from a moccasin built to the highest quality? Is this actually 7 layers of beefy Russell moccasin underneath your foot? And did Russell pull it off? Did they actually make the most indestructible, most durable, most over-the-top moccasin boot that's ever been made? So first, what is this monstrosity? Well, the brand is Russell Moccasins. The style is the beefy 7-layer Russell moccasin. We got away with calling it that. Shout out to Russell for letting us call it that. They weigh 2 pounds, 8 ounces each. So overall, you're at 5 pounds for a pair of these. They retail for an extremely steep $1,150, which rightfully so, you're probably like, what the hell? How can you ever charge over $1,000 for a pair of boots? But we're gonna go over that and why this boot basically got built 3 times over compared to any other boot. They're also made in the United States, and the way they position this boot is exactly what the intro was. I just challenged them to make the ultimate boot, and they did. So now start looking at the materials, starting with the leather first. This is their timberjack leather. It comes in at 2.3 to 2.5 millimeters thick, and as you can see, this stuff looks like woolly mammoth. We almost call it the snuffleupagus boot or mammoth boot because of how furry this leather is. And the reason they did it with the furry side out is this is a lot more abrasion resistant. It basically protects that smooth grain pattern by flipping it to the inside. And you might be thinking, oh, 2.5 is good, but it's not the 3.5 I see in Pacific Northwest boots. Well, that's because these boots would be literally impossible to make in the true moccasin style construction if it was any thicker than this. So instead, what moccasin style construction does is instead of using thicker materials, they use multiple layers of materials. So just looking at the lining, you can see, first of all, we got this nice big padded collar, giving you a nice squish while still having that leather over top. But you can see on the inside, it's kind of a tan leather. So this is their waterproof leather, and this waterproof leather wraps all the way around your foot. They literally build a leather sock around your foot and then do a waterproof sock on the inside of that. So that's just 2 layers of leather, making the overall thickness already at 4 millimeters. And then you look at the molded sole, and the best way to understand this is if I actually dissect it and show you as I go along. Because you might just think, oh, it's like a sneaker. It's got a bumper that goes all the way around. How can this be that different from other boots and how they're built? And if you look deep inside here, you're like, I don't see any stitches on the inside. How is this thing all held together? Is it just glued together? Well, there's a bunch of hidden stitches that sew the upper down through the midsole, but because it has that waterproof lining, it's completely seamless. So if I put this little knife in there and we start popping some of these stitches, this is really going to show you that idea of the Native American moccasin combined with your European boot making techniques, because you just wait till you see this. Okay, little mini reveal for you. Look at that. Look at that, seamless, completely seamless all the way through the bottom. So this is what I meant by true moccasin construction. There's not a single seam anywhere on this piece of leather. I don't even see where they puckered it. So they take a flat 2-dimensional shape and wrap it up around the sidewalls instead of from the top down. And so this is basically like they built the boot backwards, because usually this is how you build the boot, and then these seams would be flared out, and and then sewn down or Goodyear welted. But because it's backwards, then they wrap it up and then it's sewn into the sidewall, which makes way more sense because instead of having all those structural stitches, all those components underneath your foot where it's getting the most abrasion, where it's getting the most dirt, where it's getting the most wear, all those important stitches are flipped up on top of the boot. You can already tell visually this can be super comfortable to walk in. And so when all you do is put a little midsole layer, an outsole layer on top, stitch it down, that's why these are so freaking comfortable. And so to make it ultra beefy, ultra over the top, redundant, ridiculous, indestructible, they just layered up several layers of this. So just these layers of leather in the upper, you've got 2.5 millimeters with the vamp leather, 2.5 with the molded sole, and 1.5 with the lining leather. So you're up to 6.5 millimeters already off the bat. And that's not counting these layers. And 6.5 millimeters, like, oh, that's nothing compared to the Pacific Northwest brands or these heritage brands, because that's basically the same amount as one layer of thick veg tan. Well, the biggest difference is this isn't that super thick veg tan. It's a lot softer, it's a lot more supple, but the biggest difference is that seamless sidewall. And one of the coolest things about Russells that are different from a lot of the other mock toe boots out there is they have a patented toe stitch that was patented like the 50s or 40s, which is no longer patented. And so if you've ever wondered, what is this mock toe stitch for? The real reason mock toe stitches exist is because when they used to make moccasins, like moccasins, where they wrap from the bottom up, they needed a stitch to sew all that together. So then why do mock toe boots have a mock toe stitch? Is because it used to be a sign of quality that you got a true moccasin construction, that these leathers wrap all the way underneath your foot, make a seamless, multi-layered squish construction. And you can tell it's a moccasin boot because it has the mock toe stitch. And over the last 60 years, people just slowly were like, just put the mock toe stitch on that. They don't know the difference. Like, we like the look of the mock toe stitch. Well, we can imply that these are higher quality by having the stitch. And so this is basically the modern equivalent of modern work boots putting a fake Goodyear welt stitch on their boots. But it happened so long ago that it just slowly became part of boots, and people just completely forgot about the idea that the mock toe stitch meant that it was a moccasin boot. And now people just associate mock toe stitch with work boots. And so it's this really cool old vestigial of moccasin boots that meant quality that now doesn't really mean anything unless it's a true moccasin boot. So if you didn't know why mock toe boots have a mock toe stitch, that's why. So now that you know that, let's cut these boots in half and see what else they did to make these the most indestructible true mock toe boots of all time. And did we pull it off? Does it have 7 layers of beefy Russell moccasin underneath your foot? Let's find out. Look at all these kilties. You know, we originally started selling our kilties in limited sizes and our 4 or 5 standard leathers, but they're so popular and people are always asking us for more specialty leathers that other brands use, like some Red Wing leathers, some Shrunken Bison leathers, some whites and Thoroughgood leathers, and Bloodcore. And then all these new kilty leathers also come in our coasters, and these have been really popular. The Shrunken Bison, like this black Shrunken Bison, the tobacco Shrunken Bison, and the chocolate, because look how thick they are, you know, and they just have a really cool texture. They're just really tactile feeling, you know, they just kind of have a nice feel to them. And they come in all of our different sizes, our fringe kilties and our no-show kilties from 6-inch all the way up to 10-inch, and even some quarter-bend no-show kilties. So check them out below, protect your investment. Kilties are made to help protect your tongue from wearing out, prevent stuff getting inside your boot, take a little bit of space up if you got a case of the lads, so check them out below. That was one of the cooler cut in halves we've done in a really long time. It really showed visually us like peeling back the layer upon layer upon layer of this 7-layer beefy Russell mock. And if you do want a pair of these, Russell's making 50 pairs of these. Only 50 because they're such a pain in the butt to make. There's so little money in basically making a boot 3 times over to make one boot but I was willing to convince him for 50 pairs. So if you do want a pair of these, check them out below. And huge shout out to Russell for being willing to do this concept and to make them available to you guys. Because technically it's a collaboration, but this is mostly Russell. I just issued the challenge. It was like, I challenge you to make the most indestructible mock toe boot. So it's a collaboration in that way, but for the most part, this is all just Russell cooking. So now let's see what's inside. So now you can see what I really meant by it basically being a waterproof sock around your foot, because you can still see stitches on the inside here, but the important thing is they don't line up and they're not part of the other stitches on the outside. So if water got in through this overlap stitch and somehow made it all the way through, it's not going to immediately soak into the lining or soak through the lining, because there's no stitching that lines up with that. And then with this sidewall stitch, it clearly has some sort of wax on it, so it'd have to seep through the wax and the thread, and then once again it's not lined up with these other stitches, so it'd have to seep down through and then through the waterproof leather, through the stitching, and then into your sock. So it's probably not the most waterproof boot of all time, but it's definitely the most waterproof traditional boot that we've ever cut in half. But the coolest thing of this is look at all the layers. Look at that. Isn't that absolutely ridiculous? So this is what I meant by it's basically built 3 times over. Because most boots, you take that leather in the upper and you wrap it around the toe of the boot, and then it's either sewn down or stitched together, and usually the lining's in the same process. With this specific boot, they have 3 pairs of boots in one process. And instead of giant machines doing it, this is all done by hand. But that's just the moccasin, because the rest of this is more like your traditional heritage boots, where you've got the 5mm super thick veg tan leather that the moccasin is actually sewn down through, and you can see, oh, what's this stitch right here? That's got to be some sort of decorative stitch or something, right? But that stitch is what holds the 2 midsole layers together, because underneath that leather you've got a rubber midsole. Then underneath that rubber midsole you've got the steel shank. And underneath the steel shank, you've got that really cool made in the USA Montana outsole. It's got the heaviest lugs on the outside here, looking like a bunch of chainsaw teeth. And then they got these little balls on the inside, and what these balls do, they give you grip, but they also allow you to release the mud. So that's why you see them on the old school caribou boots, because snow and mud and grime, it naturally dislodges better in this kind of outsole compared to like a logger outsole. Most moccasins that you see don't have any sort of heel structure because they're moccasins, but with this, they got this big 5mm slab of veg tan leather that's a lot more similar to the Pacific Northwest brands, that wraps around your heel, structuring it, basically giving your heel a cup so it doesn't slop one way or the other, supporting it, preventing you from rolling, preventing you from over slopping to the side of the boot. And the cool thing is, that's exactly what the molded sole does for your forefoot. This molded sole also gives you protection, it gives you an additional layer of abrasion resistance, but more importantly, it's basically a triple layered cup for your foot, so it'll expand to the shape of your foot. And that to me is what makes these boots so unique, is some of these features that you'd be like, oh, it's because of this. They have multiple reasons why they are beneficial to wearing the boots. So then how much leather are you actually standing on inside of these boots? Well, it comes up to about 10mm of leather. 4 different layers of just leather equaling 10mm. And so you compare that to the Pacific Northwest boots, where you've got 2 layers of that 5 to 6mm leather, and they're about the same thickness, but they feel completely different because of that seamless sidewall, because it's multiple layers of thinner leather. So is that as durable as the 2 layers of that really thick veg tan leather? Probably not. It's probably less durable, but this style of 10mm of leather underneath your foot is worlds apart different in terms of comfort. So did they pull it off? Is this the heaviest duty moccasin of all time? I have yet to see anything even gets close to rivaling this. Are they heavier duty than the Pacific Northwest boots and some of these really high-end work boots? I don't think so. I still think the Pacific Northwest boots would beat these in terms of overall durability. But if Pacific Northwest boots get like a 9.5 out of 10, I would give these like an 8.5. But these are still gonna be significantly more durable than any other work boot out there. And there's still an argument to be made that for certain applications, this boot is gonna be better than any other boot on the market. Like if you need the comfort and you need the repairability, if you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, if you want something that's lighter weight, that's still durable, that has all the benefits and features of Pacific Northwest boot without any of the downsides, that's kind of what these are. But if I were to play devil's advocate and say, well, the Pacific Northwest boots are better in this way, what would it be? There's only 2 things that I can think of that would give the Pacific Northwest boots the edge. One would be in rigidity, which is one of the strongest features of this, and the other being that super thick veg tan insole that will probably last longer than these materials. So huge props to Russell. They absolutely pulled it off. They crushed it. And it's just a cool proof of concept, an ability for Russell to flex their muscles and show what really 125 years of history and heritage heritage, making some of the best boots in the entire world can do when you challenge them to make the ultimate, most indestructible moccasin boot. And on top of that, it's not just a one-off project. You guys can actually own a pair of these, which I'm not trying to be salesy. There's only 50 pairs available, but it is something that's really cool, but it's very limited and it's very hard for Russell to make. It's not a simple process, so huge shout out to Russell. And I didn't give an official count on all the layers. If you got everything on the inside, how many layers is this actually? Is it the 7-layer beefy Russell Mock, or is it the 45-layer beefy Russell Mock? 1 with the outsole, 2 with the shank, 3 with the rubber midsole, 4 with the leather midsole, 5 with the molded sole, 6 with the vamp, 7 with the rand, 8 with the counter since it wraps under, 9 with the waterproof booty, 10 with the pour-on foam, 11 with the lining leather on top. So technically, this even outdid what I expected it to be. It's not the 7-layer beefy Russell Mock, it's the 11-layer beefy Russell Mock. So you got 11 layers of handmade construction underneath your foot. So thanks again to Russell Moccasin for being able to make this one of the more painful ones I've ever had to cut apart, because this might be the most labor-intensive boot we've ever cut apart. So thank you guys again for watching and supporting this. It's the only way I can convince these brands to take their techniques to the ultimate extreme is when you guys support them and support these videos. So thank you guys. See ya.